there, this is Cassia.
And this is Brian.
Welcome to The Ebon Hawk, a podcast discussing Star Wars news and Knights of the Old Republic.
Spoiler alert for the Knights of the Old Republic series and the Star Wars films, TV shows, and all other media.
This is where the fun begins. All right, so all the way back from episode 32, we had Dennis on, and guess who's back? It's Dennis.
It's me.
Yeah.
It's Dennis.
For those who didn't listen to episode 32, could you give an introduction to who you are?
Yeah, so my name's Dennis S. Mowers. I am a composer for film, video games, all sorts of types of media.
Yeah, and Dennis is the person in the world who I think probably knows the most about KOTOR music outside of the original composers, and he's very talented. You should follow him when we end the episode. Like, you can track where he's going, and like, he's going places, so we're happy to have him on again. So in episode 32, we talked all about KOTOR music. Were there any songs you feel like we missed that you were like, why didn't we talk about that one?
Well, Tatooine, I guess. You know, we really didn't bring that up, did we?
I think we
Tatooine.
talked about the Anchorhead kind of street fight, and we're like, that kind of sounds like a little bit like Rey's theme, even though it was like, you know, before Rey, and a little bit of like maybe some Sandcrawler themes, but I think we forgot to talk about the Tatooine / Ebon Hawk theme. And are those the same theme? Like,
Yeah.
Okay. So
I don't think it should have been, but especially, you know, when you go over to KOTOR 2, and it's got this like beautiful theme, which, you know, fits of course the tone of that game. But the first game, it's just it's odd to have, you know, all these specific tracks for specific places, and then, you know, the place you're probably gonna be most in the game, I would assume, like, you know, Ebon Hawk.
yeah.
And you have this, just, you don't have special music for it. You don't have specific a theme for it or anything.
In the first game, what do you think it would sound like? Like, what kind of tone do you think it would have?
To be honest, I'm not really sure, because, well, you know, the second game, it's a much more cinematic experience when you're on the ship, because you get all these like different cutscenes with characters, and but the first game, it's mostly just a method of transportation.
Yeah.
And so it's not like, you know, maybe even something like, you know how later in the game they play just the Old Republic theme?
Yeah.
Maybe even that.
That would have
be
been
honest.
better.
Just something that feels more like, okay, yeah, we're on this mission to defeat the Sith, which, yeah.
Yeah, because pretty much, I mean, you get on to the Ebon Hawk and, you know, you're fleeing Terrace, and then, you know, towards the end of the game, you know, you have some malfunction and end up crashing the Ebon Hawk. But like you said, yeah, it's mostly just a means of transportation. So I don't know. It'd be hard to place a theme kind of on what's going on board the Ebon Hawk.
Yeah, it's definitely not as important of a, I don't want to say important, but not it. The second game almost treats the ship like its own character, in a way. But the first game, it's definitely just, you know, point A to point B. It's like the '94 Corolla of the Star Wars universe in that way.
Yeah, because I do, like on the Ebon Hawk Instagram, sometimes I do like little mood boards or aesthetics, and like, it's like, should I do one for the Ebon Hawk and Knights of the Old Republic? I was like, maybe I will, but like, there wasn't as much personality, you know?
Yeah.
The second one definitely does. And like, even with like T3M4, like, I think some things that were just kind of like Star Wars window dressing, like in Knights of the Old Republic 1, were given a lot more thought, like in Knights of the Old Republic 2. And
Oh yeah, it's night and day.
yeah.
Night and day.
So, and I love both of the Knights of the Old Republics. Like, that's why we named our podcast after the Ebon Hawk, because like Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 shares the Ebon Hawk, but there's things like give and take from both games. But, you know, like, we have, like, 70-plus episodes of Knights of the Old Republic content, so we're kind of invested, you know? But
Yeah, there's no turning back now.
That's right.
Yeah, so you are a video game composer, and
Yes.
do you want to just introduce, like, pitch your project?
Yeah, so you may have seen something called KOTOR Live. If you listen to the previous episode I was on, we talked about it there too. And it's just a project to take some of the more popular tracks from Knights of the Old Republic soundtrack and record it with live instruments. And it didn't happen the way that I envisioned it would happen, just because, you know, the world went into chaos. And so I planned on doing it actually live in my school's studio. And now I think a good portion of it's going to be done remotely. And I actually did start the recording process. Because I did, back when I had access to the studio, I recorded guitar, actually, for one of the tracks. And that was the only thing that I recorded, ever, for KOTOR Live. Because I was going to actually record everything from March to May of 2020, and obviously that didn't happen. But, yeah, I actually just recorded the cello solo for Bastila's theme and put that in today.
Oh, cool.
And I'm waiting on the live strings to come back, like the file for those, for the Old Republic, Terrace Upper City, and Bastila.
Oh,
So
awesome.
So it has started.
Awesome.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah.
What was the guitar for, out of curiosity?
Yeah, Auto City.
Oh, yeah.
I put acoustic guitar in just as almost like an experiment, but
Yeah.
it worked.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that sounds like a good pairing, like Auto City with guitar, honestly.
yeah, I mean, with the water and everything, it almost gives it a kind of like beach vibe. Makes me think of what's that Zelda track? Might be thinking of like Lake Hylia or something from Twilight Princess. I don't know.
I should probably know that, but I don't.
I'm sitting here drinking out of a Zelda mug, so.
Yeah. And then you're also helping us KOTOR Lo-Fi, and you...
Yes, it's been interesting so far.
It's funny because, like, we were asking for your help with it, and then, like, later that same day, you're like, oh, is this good? And it's like, oh, just a little tweaks, and then I'm like, wow, this is, like, actually perfect. Like, exactly what I thought, like, KOTOR Lo-Fi would sound like, so...
Yeah, because, I mean, like, yeah, you asked, you brought it up, like, what would KOTOR Lo-Fi sound like? And I'm like, that's interesting. So I spent the day thinking about it, and then you actually asked, like, hey, can you do this? And I'm like, I have ideas already. Like, this is great. So
yeah, Cassia sent me a note and said that she had asked you about it, and that you didn't have any experience working with it. And then like later that day we got it. I was like, this is amazing. So
yeah. And I was mentioning to Brian, like, I was like, when Karth says, like, I don't want to talk about it, but it's, like, part of, like, the Terrace Upper City Lo-Fi, I was like, that's the apotheosis of what everything we're doing with this podcast. And, like, it was just really fun to listen to and really captures kind of just, like, the Lo-Fi kind of sound of, like, KOTOR. And so, spoiler alert, our patrons on Patreon have been kind of helping us. They've been voting, and kind of like through their monetary support, we've been able to kind of get these tracks coming out, and they've been voting on like which tracks to kind of adapt. And the second track that we're I'm saying we're kind of working on, but it's mostly just Dennis working on it,
Yeah, we're doing very little of
we're just
this,
like,
to be honest.
hey, but like. So the second track is like the Sith/Endar Spire theme, and like we're pumped for that. So
that's gonna be really interesting.
Yeah.
Now Terra Supper City was kind of like, laid back to begin with.
Yeah.
It's going to be a process trying to get that with like a lo-fi feel.
Yeah.
But it's a challenge I'm definitely willing to accept. So.
Yeah, definitely. And like Old Republic theme, like kind of like the starting music, like maybe it would be a little bit easier, but like you have to kind of give props because Knights of the Old Republic, it doesn't begin like with like just little baby starter music or like kind of a tutorial. It's just like, boom, you are in the Old Republic and you have to deal with it, like.
I mean, yeah, this game just starts.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you know how this is Star Wars? Well, here's a war in the stars. Have fun with it.
Yeah.
Have fun. You have no idea what's going on or where you're at, but.
Yeah. And definitely later down the line, like, we'll get to all the cool tracks, and like Basilisk theme I think is like made to be a lo-fi track, so don't worry.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This game's soundtrack in general, especially compared to the second one, just because this was made by Jeremy Soule and he did the Elder Scrolls games as well.
Mm-hmm.
He has a very specific style, and he uses his own sampling libraries that he made himself, which is why nothing else sounds like his soundtracks.
Yeah.
No matter how organic it's meant to sound, it's always going to have this weird synthetic sound, and that's just part of his identity as a composer.
Yeah.
So it fits well for lo-fi because of that, I think.
Yeah, so thanks for your contribution to like making that possible, and thanks to all of our patrons on Patreon who are kind of helping us kind of move that project forward. So like maybe one day there will be KOTOR Live and then KOTOR Lo-Fi, and yeah, so it's pretty fun. Were you also wanting to plug your project, your capstone project, Dennis?
Oh yeah, honestly, I kind of forgot about that. Yeah, I have 1 year left of grad school, so it's I'm doing my capstone, and I am looking for a game to score. I'm going to do it for free just because it's for an educational purpose. But yeah, I'm going to be working with my advisor on the project is going to be Pat Irwin, who did the music for Rocko's Modern Life, a couple of other shows like Nurse Jackie, and was a member of the B-52s. So it's going to be a super fun time. And if you are a game developer, reach out to me and we can talk about what we can do for your game. So.
And Brian, before we move on, did you kind of want to talk about t-shirts?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a couple of new additions to the Ebon Hawk merchandise store. So if you've seen, we've been talking the last couple of weeks, we had our t-shirts in there. So we've got those available in a bunch of colors. So blue, brown, green, black, navy, like a pink and purple color, red, yellow, and white. And we also added some hats about a week ago, which are pretty awesome. And as of recording today, our first Ebon Hawk logo pins went for sale. So those are on the merchandise website. So definitely go check those out. They turned out really good. We're very excited to have those in the store. We were excited about the way they turned out. So definitely go check out the merchandise shop. You can find that link on our Instagram bios. And also you can just go to it. It's ebonhawkpodcast.square.site and have a look and see what you think.
I'm waiting for an Ebon Hawk podcast bumper sticker.
Oh, there you go.
So everyone on the road can know that that I'm a huge nerd.
Yeah, it's just gonna say my co-pilot is Cartho Nassi. And
there we go.
All right. Well, now we've talked about some of Dennis's music and mentioned in episode 32, we totally skipped over the Tatooine Ebon Hawk song. But now, here for this episode, we're back on Tatooine. So why don't we talk about it a little bit? So we get to Tatooine. It's going to start off our second sort of film adaptation that we've got going on here. So we get there, land in Anchorhead. There's some side quests that we need to sort of sort out. So there's the Basila's mother side quest. There's Canderous' side quest. So we have some loose ends to tie up for the party, but kind of the big priority on Tatooine is that we need to go and find the star map. So how are we going to get there? It's out in the Dune Sea. We're going to have to pick up HK-47 so we can do some translating for us with the Tusken Raiders. And they're going to, help us find where this cave is that's being guarded by a very big, very scary crate dragon. We're going to, of course, slay the crate dragon, get our crate pearl, and head out of Tatooine. Mission accomplished. But how are we going to adapt this cinematically? Dennis, if you're watching a movie about Knights of the Old Republic and we get to Tatooine, what do you think it should look like, or what parts of the story are you most interested in seeing on Tatooine?
Well, definitely, okay, because Tatooine has some of the richest history in all of Star Wars. It's the Star Wars planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that you definitely have to go the route of what A New Hope and The Phantom Menace did, where you really just show, the gritty, the town, and all this crazy stuff's happening in the background, and all these, different aliens are walking around and stuff. You need to introduce this as a place it's just a backwater planet that nobody wants to be on.
Mm-hmm.
You need to start with that,
Yeah, definitely.
Because always, in every time that Tatooine appears, it's always more than meets the eye. There's always something like a hidden gem there, and in this case, it's going to be the star map.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, there's always kind of like a hidden underbelly to what's going on in Tatooine that we see for sure. So this is going to be our first actual look at Anchorhead, I believe, at least on film. So it's been mentioned, and we've seen some of the other towns, but our first look into Anchorhead. So when I think about the way that this is going to look, I think that since it is set so far in the past, I almost think of it as being set up as more of like a medieval type of a city. So kind of tight, narrow streets, little stalls. I mentioned it in a previous episode, kind of, these stalls kind of carved out of the stone as opposed to being fabricated like what we'd see in Mos Eisley. But yeah, just kind of a medieval city type of a feeling. And in the game, it is kind of that, right? Like it's a walled city, like you go out of the city walls to get out to.
Yeah, you have to have a permit to leave.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I see it visually. And as far as like the crew of the Ebon Hawk, the team there in Tatooine, I think that we need to kind of split up the characters a little bit. So, maybe some of them can, hunt for clues or take care of some of these other side quests to try to figure out where we're going. On Tatooine, we've got to figure out where the star map is. I like the idea of we don't know exactly where it is. In the game, you kind of get a vision that leads you to this cave, but I think maybe we have to do a little bit more detective work.
Yeah, because a cave can be anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So
on the entire planet. So
yeah, the whole thing might be a cave out under the Dune Sea for sure. So, but yeah, I think kind of splitting up the team a little bit, giving everyone kind of little sort of mini missions to go on, and that kind of keeps the storylines flowing and developing the characters a little bit more. And then I also think that we get a pretty heavy sort of presence from the Zerka Corporation. I don't know kind of what their role is going to be. Maybe our reason for going out to the Tusken Raider camp is that they're, trying to wipe that out or take over it to build a settlement, and maybe we kind of interfere with that. I don't know if that's too similar to what was going on in Kashyyyk, but I think that Zerka is going to...
Is this after Kashyyyk?
Going to be there. In our film adaptation, so we end the first film with Kashyyyk, and then we start the second one here on Tatooine. That's not how most people play the game, but we think for a film that makes a little bit more sense. What do you think, Cassia? How do you envision Tatooine?
So, for me, Tatooine has been on film, a lot. So I'm like, how do we make this different? And, part of me is, maybe able to contemplate KOTOR, treason and be like, what if it were like Jeddah or something? But I'm like, no, it probably has to be Tatooine because it's Tatooine, you know?
Mm,
But I'm just like, what I'm concerned about is like just trying to make it visually interesting and not feel stale or just like we're retreading just kind of like old, kind of like here's a Tusken Raider, here's a Jawa, you know,
right.
like kind of just to be like ka-ching nostalgia bucket, you know. um but I like what you say about like kind of making Anchorhead feel like a medieval city, kind of like, and part of me kind of just thinks about like to give it a little bit more personality, what if it's like the stucco is like
Mm,
colored to
hmm.
kind of give it more of an identity than just like it's sand colored, deal with it, you know? And I think like the main side quest that would kind of take up the bulk of our time, like on Tatooine, like of course there would be like the sand people and a bit of the Jawas, but I would say like I'm excited to talk to Huni D, but I just think that the Tusken Raider side quest is like the main reason why I would want to keep it Tatooine rather than maybe going to Jeddah,
Hmm.
you know, or another desert planet or just another planet, you know. But I think like you want to introduce HK-47. I'm sure like some Disney executives would be like, but we want to sell the Funko Pop with the first film. How do we do that? And it's like, just be patient, you know, for the story. But I think like the main side quest that matters a lot is like kind of giving Candace something to do because like I'm kind of like, why does he want to be there? Like,
Hmm.
you know, like, and then like having Bastila meet her mom, maybe like saying like, oh, Candace is being dragged down by his past. He should really let that go, you know, or like Bastila's probably saying something about like, oh, Jedi can't have attachments and families, and you know that's the wisdom of the Jedi. And then like maybe she's like tapped on the shoulder, and it's like, hey, your mom is here, and it's just like, what? Like, I just think that would be funny.
Well, how is this? I assume like a lot of the conversations have already happened, between Bastila and like, player character, or whatever the character's name happens to be,
Hmm.
about like talking about her mother and stuff like that, right? They've already, yeah. So I don't know. And also on the topic of Canderous, it's always kind of seemed like in this game he really doesn't have much of a motivation. Like the
Yeah,
second game does a good job of like giving every character pretty much like something to do, or like some, they're there. There's a reason like in the narrative that they're there,
Hmm.
for the whole time. But yeah, Canderous is just kind of chilling on the Ebon Hawk, making some stims.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, after we get him off of Terrace, yeah, there's not really a good reason that he stays around, but maybe he's just hungry for some action, I guess maybe.
Yeah.
And I did like what you mentioned, Dennis, about seeing all sorts of different aliens and creatures and animals in Anchorhead, because like you said, that is kind of an important aspect of Tatooine.
We probably really haven't had that yet in this story, because we had different aliens like separated on Terrace, right,
Hmm.
with like the segregated areas. Dantooine, get the occasional alien here and there, but then Kashyyyk's just mostly Wookiees. And this is the first time we get this like this hub of different people all just like commingling, and it almost seems like Tatooine is kind of like a fledgling operation here, right?
Hmm.
Like everyone's trying to like make the most of this dust ball, and
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
almost like the 49ers, mining in the mid 19th century.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe that's kind of what you could lean on with the Zerka Corporation. Like they're really trying real hard to get Anchorhead set up as some sort of like port city.
Yeah.
So you get sort of that vibe. It's just set in the middle of this, completely desolate wasteland of a planet. So, but yeah, I think that could be
yeah.
interesting for sure.
I mean, for me, like I would mainly kind of have Circa be in the first film, and like Just so Dennis like kind of knows what we were kind of talking about, like our hypothetical, just kind of like us talking. Like first film is like starts on Terrace. Terrace is kind of a tragedy, and then there's like the Tatooine midpoint where you kind of introduce the Force, and then there is a victory on a jungle planet. So it's kind of like, because like Terrace and Kashyyyk kind of deal with a lot of the same problems, and there's like different levels, and kind of like jungles and cities are kind of like, sometimes people are like, oh, it's a concrete jungle, or like, I don't know, like, so it kind of just felt like a little bit like a mirror, like Terrace and Kashyyyk, and then it's kind of like we kind of wanted the first film to kind of end on a high note, and then like the second film kind of like we kind of go Tatooine, Manon, Leviathan, so it's like it kind of it starts okay, then it ends like, kind of like with the kind of major cliffhanger, but that's what we were kind of thinking of. So
yeah, I definitely see that, and in my head I've tried to like, be like, oh, what if there were books of KOTOR, and I split it up a certain way, make a trilogy, and it's a lot harder with the second game, but for the first one I think it works pretty well, leaving like the whole like Empire Strikes Back kind of like, oh, they took Bastila, kind of like how they took Han,
Yeah, playing on that sort of the struggle of the second act there for sure. All right. Well, one thing we're not going to struggle doing on Tatooine is getting HK-47, because he wouldn't allow that. In the game, we get HK-47 from like a droid shop on the street. We have to buy him. Dennis, do you have any better ideas on how we would meet up with HK-47 on Tatooine, as opposed to just running across him in a junk shop, or do you think that's the best way to go about it?
I think that might be the best way to go about it, because if you really think about it, he's comic relief, right? He's like dark comedy, so it's like it's just that much funnier. Like the way he's introduced is not like this like assassin or anything. He's just like, hey, please buy me. I promise I won't kill you.
Right.
Like I could kill everything else around me, but I promise I won't kill you. Right, Master? Like it's just funny to me. I think that it's good the way it is.
Yeah. I kind of go back and forth on it, whether I think that that's a good way in a movie to do it. But I think that I finally settled on a good way to do it without necessarily going and buying him, but still having him be at the droid shop and kind of getting him involved early on, so we get to Anchorhead. I see like maybe Revan and Bastila, or Revan and whoever kind of walking through town, and they walk by this droid shop, and HK is just kind of standing there, silent, not activated. And when Revan walks by, hears him say something, and he kind of comes to life, and he says something like HK-47 would say, like he says like, surprise reaction, my master has returned, or something like that. And then I think you could kind of have a little bit of a comedic moment. So maybe he's like trying to leave, and the droid shop owner is trying to stop him. And he has like a restraining bolt on it, and you see HK like grabbing the restraining bolt and taking it off, and telling him that he's leaving, or else something like that. And then he's just kind of following along behind us on Anchorhead before he's able to actually catch up with us at some point when the group's taking a rest, and then we're actually introduced to him. But as the audience, we get to see him kind of playing through this a little bit, kind of going through the city there. Cassio, what do you think? Is HK at the junk shop, or is there a different way to meet him?
I have two ideas in mind. Like maybe they stumble on HK-47 like in the midst of kind of like the adventure, and it's like, who are you? And it's like, HK-47, I have liberated myself from my master. And they're like, what does that mean, or something? Like they're like, did you kill him, or like
right.
What, like, or maybe there's like some dark Jedi confront you in Tatooine, and it's like, droid, do something, and it's like, you have to buy me first, and then it's like, I don't know, they have to like complete the transaction, like, and it's like, you didn't put the credit card all the way, and it's like, you need to sign, and then I don't know.
Yeah,
I was kind of just thinking of that, but I think like with HK-47, you kind of want his memory wiped to kind of mirror Revan's memory being wiped, and then like kind of like when that after that reveal on the Leviathan, then he would remember. But that's just me.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of Revan having left him to guard the star map. So when we get there, we meet him. But I think, like Dennis said, he's there kind of for comedic relief and to have, kind of this vocal droid in the party. So I think getting him there earlier and giving him sort of some sort of humorous way to be introduced is probably the best way to go. At least for me, anyway. So.
I mean, he does talk about crushing Yukalaka's neck quite a bit.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Maybe frying his master wouldn't be the worst way to do it.
Yeah. So one of the little side quests that you get in Tatooine, really you get it on kind of any of the planets, no matter which one you go to. But on board the Ebon Hawk, there are some little pest-like creatures that seem to keep sprouting up and multiplying. They're called Gizka. Dennis, do you deal with these creatures at all if you're playing through the game, or how do you get rid of them? And do you think that they play a critical role in our story here?
I think that it's honestly more comic relief. It's very prequel, like very like Phantom Menace, which is not a bad thing. It's fun. It's just funny to me. That's it. I especially just like the fact that you can interact with them in the game, and there's, you don't really do anything with them. You can like kill them, and another one just pops up, and you're like, all right, I guess this interaction was useless.
Yeah. And
they're just there the whole time, unless you can sell them to somebody or.
Yeah, you can keep talking to them, and they just kind of look at you. It is kind of funny, and like you're not really given any sort of clear direction on what to do with them. So in the game, the side quest is called The Trouble with Gizka, which is a play on a Star Trek episode, which was called The Trouble with Tribbles. Yeah.
Tribbles.
And I just finished a playthrough of Knights of the Old Republic not too long ago, and I completely forgot what I was supposed to be doing with these things, and I ended up they all met their end aboard the Ebon Hawk. I think something came up and got them. I don't know if we need to see them necessarily. Maybe we see one kind of.
Not really.
Maybe we could see one like scampering like around in the spaceport, in Tatooine or something, and maybe someone says, "Oh, it looks like whatever part of the ship had been being chewed up by some Gizka or something." But I don't know that they really need to come on board and be an active part of the story, but maybe it could just drop a little nugget for all the Gizka fans out there for sure.
There's definitely some things in this game that are obviously just meant to be like, let's see what the player can do with this. There's a few different options, but like it has nothing to do with the story,
right?
Because also there's like Sasha.
Oh yeah,
like
Oh boy. The possessed child. Well, she just sounds like, a 30-year-old, and I'm like, okay, this child freaks me out.
But yeah.
What about you, Cassia? Do you think the Gizka are important? Should we have a couple, keep them as pets? They're kind of like the porgs of Knights of the Old Republic, right? They're not as cute, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think they're adorable, but like I don't think they're quite needed. Maybe like you can like when you're escaping terrorists, you can be like you landed on Dantooine and it's like, wow, we made it, and then like you disembark and then it's like, what is that? It's like, oh, it's a Gizka. Well, it's gone now, and like maybe like on terrorists, like maybe Davik or Canderous are like, oh, we need to buy more Gizka repellent or something, or something. But maybe it could be like a snack, in the KOTOR era, or like, like at Galaxy's Edge, they have a Ronto wrap. Maybe like you can buy a Gizka wrap on another planet, and maybe have some synergy, get some Gizka merch and food options, at Galaxy's Edge. But I'm not like the Gizka need to appear for it to be a authentic cinematic experience.
Right. I could see Gizka being on the ship and it just driving Canderous absolutely bananas that he can't get rid of these things. That could be pretty fun. So
He's just like running around, like punting them like a football.
exactly.
Oh boy.
I could see that going on, but I'm with you, Cassie.
End credits, like no Gizga were harmed during the making of this film.
Right? Exactly. And yeah, definitely always down for some Gizka merch. So if we need to have him in the movie to get some of that going on, I'm there for that. So.
And I just want to try. When I was at Galaxy's Edge, I should have gotten the Ronta wrap, and now I'm like, darn it, I should have gotten that, and now I just want to have something Knights of the Old Republic at Galaxy's Edge, and it would be fun.
Definitely. All right. Well, we've talked a little bit about kind of what's going on Tatooine. So something that we struggle with when we're thinking about doing this as a film. So we've seen Tatooine on, episode 4, episode 6, episode 1 and 2. We've seen it in The Mandalorian now. So how is Tatooine going to look different and feel different, so it doesn't just feel like, oh, here we go again? It's time to roll out the Tatooine footage. Do you have any thoughts in mind about what's going to make this iteration of Tatooine feel a little bit different than what we've seen before, so it doesn't feel like we're treading water too much?
For me, it looks like Tatooine is, again, it's in like its baby stages, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like people are just starting to show up, and they heard there was not like literally, but like gold, so it doesn't seem like it's like a crime hub like it is later,
right? Or
like slavery and all this kind of stuff's happening in the films. This is much more of a like a prospectors kind of town, and I definitely think that could give it a different sort of vibe.
Yeah, I agree. I think just having it, feel really old and more of kind of this ancient city kind of gives it a little bit of a different feeling from Mos Eisley and Mos Espa and Mos Pelgo, the places that we've seen before. For me, I think the harder part is to make the interactions with the Tusken Raiders feel different, because we had something very similar to that happen in the first episode of this last season of The Mandalorian, where he is, talking to the Tusken Raiders at their camp, and they're figuring out how to deal with this crate dragon. So I think that part is trickier. I think we could differentiate a little bit. And similar to what we see in the game is, instead of the Tusken Raiders being kind of like these nomad kind of people, maybe it's more of like an established society. So when in the game you go out and it's like a big like encampment that they have. So I think having like an actual like Tusken Raider village that we're going to and visiting would give it a little bit of a different feel. What do you think, Cassia? How is Tatooine going to look and feel different this time around?
I would just hope to like let it breathe 4,000 years. Like, it's not going to be the same planet. Like, I mean, it might have the same biome and weather, but let it feel like, I mean, just think about like our planet like 4,000 years ago. A lot looked different. Like, let it just, it doesn't have to look completely alien from the films, but like just let it be different. Like, not everything needs to be the same. Like, I believe if you do a lot of good world building and like with your marketing campaign, like people would know it's 4,000 years different. So they're not going to be like, when does Luke show up in this and have a hallway scene? Like, I guess what I would be kind of worried about is like, how do you make the dragon showdown, different after The Mandalorian is like, what if we did that? Just kind of copy and paste that and kind of do it the same. And it's like, oh boy. So like, I don't know. Like, I just kind of say like, what about like 3 smaller crate dragons that aren't really like, Dune, like, but kind of more like the Reek that Anakin has to fight in Attack of the Clones, kind of more like a dragon. Then you have knights fighting dragons. So, well,
canonically, there are smaller crate dragons than that too. They even make mention in KOTOR of the fact that like this is a huge crate dragon.
Yeah,
they've never seen one that big. So,
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
you could play with the
So
way the town looks. Cassie, you'd mentioned it earlier, playing with like different colored stucco. Uh, Kind of what that reminds me of is if you think about Egypt and you see like the sandstone like pyramids and hieroglyphics and stuff. But if you see like any of the stuff that's been sealed off or any of like the renderings, like all of that stuff was painted back when it was first made. So it would have looked way different, right? Like 2,000 years ago than it does today. So I think you could do
yeah,
something real similar with Anchorhead without, you wouldn't want to do it too much to, like you said, where it feels like an alien environment. So it still feels like Tatooine, but I think you could definitely play on, some of those kinds of things for sure.
Yeah.
definitely.
All right. Well, who lives on Tatooine? It's the Jawas and Tuskens. We've kind of talked about the Tusken Raiders and interacting with them. What about Jawas? Is there a good opportunity to interact with the Jawas? I mean, they'd probably be, kind of scurrying about in Anchorhead, but are we going to have any actual sort of conversations, interactions with these little guys?
Come to think of it, you could involve them with the HK-47 introduction.
Yeah,
You know,
Yeah, for sure. I think kind of the most natural way and the way people would most expect it is that you're doing some sort of, bartering with them for droid or for droid parts or something. An idea I had was maybe we would, talk with some Jawas about getting transportation. Maybe they have like a speeder or a speeder bike for sale that we could use to head out into the Dune Sea. But yeah, I think some sort of interaction with them would be good. What do you think, Cassia?
hey, do you have a speeder bike? No, we have a homicidal robot though.
Yeah, there you go.
yeah. I mean, we've been kind of making some little postcards for the Instagram page that can also work for like YouTube covers and like future merch. But Astronautica Art made one for Tatooine, and it's just kind of funny because it has like HK-47 and like a Jawa is talking to HK-47, and I'm just like, oh, that would actually be really fun to see because it's like, oh no, like it would just be fun to like kind of be like, oh no, HK, like you need to, it's kind of like sometimes they like it's a little dog that like needs to learn not to like bark at like everything,
Right.
and it's like kind of just be like, no, chill out,
Yeah.
HK.
One of the ideas I had, I don't know if it's too Easter eggy, but Star Wars seems to be big on that these days. Maybe they're building the Sandcrawler when we meet them. They don't have it yet. It's still under construction.
Yeah. Well, I mean, The Mandalorian has shown us like Jawas live like on multiple planets,
Yeah.
not just Tatooine. So like maybe it's like a KOTOR era sand crawler. So like it kind of has the same shape, but kind of like kind of like how the Empire had like AT-ATs or AT-ATs. I just
Thank
say
you for saying
AT-ATs.
AT-ATs. It bothers me that they canonically say AT-ATs now.
But and then like the clone troopers have their own kind of tank, it's like, but you can kind of see where the idea came from. So I was like, oh, maybe like kind of like make it a KOTOR era kind of same idea of a sand crawler,
Kind of like the Zerko one, maybe?
So yeah,
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, that would be fine.
And what about the Tusken Raiders in the game? I think you have to take them. It's like a moisture evaporator or something like that that you end up taking out there to them, and they in turn kind of help you out and get you set back on your quest. Is that something you'd like to see happen? What sort of interaction are we going to have with the Tusken Raiders in this game, or in this film rather?
I definitely think that the moisture evaporator thing is like, it's kind of like in The Mandalorian, right? That you're going to be seeing them in a light that you've never seen them before, right? So you're actually helping them, and they're not like this random enemy that's just going to come out of somewhere and attack you like they are in like every other piece of Star Wars media. Yeah, I think keeping the light side thing is a good opportunity for it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they do kind of end up pointing us in the right direction. I'm still a little foggy on how I think the introduction to them might be. Maybe we run into one in town, or maybe we kind of stumble across their encampment on our way out through the Dune Sea. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I think that they play an important part, and I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think it would be good to see them in sort of a different setting than what we're used to seeing them in. What do you think, Cassio? What about the Tusken
Yeah.
Raiders in this film?
Yeah, I think like I prefer the light side option, and I like that they're giving a lot more nuance, in the Knights of the Old Republic side quest. And when we have Hunidi on next, we'll kind of talk about like the Tusken Raider kind of side quest on Tatooine. They're given a lot of story that and like kind of perspective that we haven't seen before, and like they tell stories of like how Tatooine used to be like kind of like a beautiful like
Mm-hmm.
garden planet, and now it's
Before
a
the
desert.
Rakatans raised it.
Yeah, and like the Jawas and the Tuscans used to be uh, kind of the same people, and it kind of just reminds me of like oral storytellers and kind of like legends, And I was like, oh, like I really like that nuance, and that's why I'm drawn to keeping the Tatooine section of Knights of the Old Republic. So, and can't wait to kind of discuss that more with Huey D, because I talked with Huey D about kind of like the Kashyyyk section, and like kind of how like it's a mirror to like the indigenous experience, and then like you kind of get that a bit with the Tuscans in Knights of the Old Republic too as well.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah,
And before we make our way to get the star map and wrap up Tatooine, there is a side quest here that we think is pretty important in terms of the story development and character development. But that is the interaction with Bastila and her mother. What do you think about that, Dennis? Is there a good way to introduce this side quest? Do they just kind of run across one another, or does she know that she's there and go to confront her? Or what do you think about that side quest and how it's going to fit into seeing Tatooine on film here?
I like that she knows that she's there. I think it gives a little bit more of a sense of a goal to Tatooine, because otherwise, you know that you're going to one place, right? Like, oh, in the game it's, oh, she's in the cantina. Other than that, you're just kind of like going, okay, so there's a star map somewhere on this planet. I don't know where it is, but it's somewhere in a cave, probably in the sand. And uh, I think that starting off, with, oh, Basila's mother's over here, actually gives you a set place that you need to go first
Mm-hmm.
on Tatooine. That can kind of get the ball rolling for the rest of the events that happen on the planet.
Yeah, I think that that's good, and I'd kind of mentioned before having the party split up a little bit and kind of go off and do their own things on their own mission, and I think that's what I want to see happen here. I don't know that Bastila necessarily knows that her mother is there, but maybe it can kind of sense her presence there, with her force abilities, or maybe she overhears. I thought maybe she'd overhear like a Zerka official saying something about like that missing Shan guy, something like that, to kind of tip her off that she's there. But I think, for me anyway, I think having her kind of have this confrontation with her mother, away from Revan and away from Jolie or Juhani if she's in the party, just kind of a one-on-one thing would be good, because it gives us an opportunity to kind of focus on Bastila and what she's going with, and it kind of keeps that hidden, at least for right now, from the rest of the party. So it's going to be more of a surprise to them at the end of this first film.
yeah. I mean, I kind of like have to just say that my fan cast for Helena Shan is actually Helena Bonham Carter. Because I think it'd just be hilarious to have Helena play Helena. But kind of like one of my fan casts for Bastila was Vanessa Kirby, and like they kind of Vanessa Kirby and Helena Bonham Carter kind of like both played Princess Margaret on The Crown, and like British brunette,
Mm-hmm.
kind of princess. So I was like, oh, that'd be kind of fun. But I think like Star Wars is a soap opera, and like I think there's a lot of people who kind of forget it's like a fairy tale soap opera, and it's like kind of what I see is like you kind of build a little like a bit of like a partnership, friendship, like which and the bond between Revan and Bastila. Like there's a bit of an attraction, not like a full Attack of the Clones. It's more of just like a little bit higher, than A New Hope, Han and Leia.
I think it also changes a lot around the time of the Revelation. Just because now you realize that like Bastila's been so involved in his life since since before he had his memories erased. So
yeah, and not like entirely truthful, so it kind of adds just like a few more layers. But like really she's the one who spared him and like kind of instigated like basically the whole plot of Knights of the Old Republic. But I think with the second film, like I would say like you kind of really have to humanize Bastila, because like I love the character Bastila, but for a lot of people she's just kind of like snooty and self-righteous. I'm like, well, what do you expect like by a sheltered like kind of messed up Jedi kid, and you kind of just have to humanize her, and like kind of like this, like it runs in her family, like like she and Helena have a lot in common.
She absolutely has Anakin energy.
Yeah.
In terms of being told that she's like the one who has this ability, like battle meditation, is like being the chosen one, and she obviously still has the connection with her mother. And...
Yeah, like kind of like unresolved issues. Like it feels like Bastila was older, like the way she kind of describes it. I'm like, was she like 5, 6, or 7? Like she had to be older than like a 2-year-old, like she remembers that. And I always kind of say like Bastila, like I think she tries to present herself as like Obi-Wan, like kind of like the dutiful Jedi. Not that they've ever met Anakin or Obi-Wan, but like kind of just like tries to present herself as like the dutiful Jedi, but it's like she's definitely the Anakin of the group. Like she just doesn't know it, and like kind of like the council kind of likes to keep her, I think kind of like she's kind of like an honor student, like that's just trying really hard to do a certain thing, and then it's like kind of like graduates and then kind of like does her own thing, and like maybe it backfires, and like just kind of hasn't learned a lot more, like about like what real life is like, which is I don't know, that's how I can see it. But like you kind of just want to humanize Bastila and kind of like realize what makes her tick. Like she's not perfect, but kind of humanize her. It gives more human drama, at stakes, rather than be like, are we going to find a super old star map or what?
Yeah, especially after the first film, because she's presented pretty much like this model Jedi. So to get kind of early in this one would be good. And so Basila's family is there because her dad is looking for a treasure, right? Because they need to get some money for the family.
Yeah.
And we end up stumbling across him when we get to where the star map is in the Krayt Dragon Cave. As far as the star map goes in the movie, what do you think that looks like? Is it going to be in a similar cave? I know, Cassia, you said you thought maybe a Krayt Dragon Cave with a couple of smaller Krayt dragons outside. What do you think, Dennis? Is the star map scene going to play out, kind of similar to how it does in the game? Or do you think you have something different in mind? What do you think it looks like?
I'd say so. I mean, it's when you really think about it, it is different than what it is in The Mandalorian, because the Krayt Dragon just happens to be there, but like it's the stuff that's inside the cave that they really need.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not this huge battle that happens either. It's just bomb it and it's done.
Right. Yeah, I think having it in that location's probably good. I kind of think maybe having like a smaller one and then a larger one. So maybe we're able to sort of sneak around a smaller one outside, or fight the smaller one outside and then go in and get the star map. And then we have the encounter with the larger Krayt Dragon outside on our way out. Something like that. I do think it would be kind of interesting and
Makes
good
me
good for the story. If we like in the game, we find the data pad from Bastila's dad, and maybe we come across a crate pearl, and then on our way out of Anchorhead, Bastila can give that to her mom and say that her dad found it. Before he met his
Yeah.
end there in the cave. Something like that, I think, could be interesting. What do you think, Cassia?
Yeah.
What do you think about that? And how are your 3 miniature crate dragons gonna meet the crew here?
I kind of think there's like 2 levels to the cave. Like there's the natural cave, or at least maybe like at least part of it's been closed off. I don't know if like whether by like native like Tatooinians, whatever that word is, or like just like maybe it's just been closed off due to natural forces. But like I just kind of envision like 3 crate dragons at the top, and then like you have to drop down, and like maybe like Bastila, Revan, and HK-47 are there, and then like HK is like, I'm just gonna march into this, and then he falls, and it's like, wow, was that the end of HK-47? And it's like, it takes more than that to kill me, Master. And then it's like, you should investigate down here. And then it's like, I just really want to embrace like space archaeology and be like, it's kind of like the Rakatan style is different from what we've seen. Like, kind of embrace like the beauty of like Renaissance or medieval star maps. Which it's more artistic than be like, here's this blinking dot. Wow, such a blinking dot. I'm just more of an art person, and like maybe just make it feel like ancient Egypt, but Star Wars.
That's kind of what I was picturing when you were talking about that, was like ancient Egypt. So maybe it is like a Rakatan like tomb or some sort of mine that they'd built there, many years prior to us showing back up, and this crate dragon sort of just moved in after it was abandoned. So,
but I kind of think like Schrodinger's Bastila's dad, and maybe Bastila could have a name, and it's like they don't know if he's dead, but I think the mom would be in a better position to be like, I think he's dead, and then Bastila's like, no, I'd be able to sense it. Like, I know he's alive, but like, have to come upon his corpse, and like, if there's anything like emotionally unstable, Jedi, which isn't good for them to come across. It's like a parent that they weren't able to save, and like, I think like just the holocron's there, and like, but maybe like Revan's the one who finds it, because like Bastila just like wasn't thinking about it or something, and then kind of gives it to her later. But I think like just kind of keep the constellations, like maybe it's like they have to kind of find the alignment, like, and like the star maps kind of hint to that, and like maybe that's the stars that we see like at the title crawl or something. I don't know. I'm just trying to keep things fresh.
Yeah, you'd mentioned the datapad from her dad there and Revan finding it. It could be interesting to have Revan find it and not tell her, because she's starting to be a little bit frayed about how she's not able to find her dad. Maybe she is talking about how he's supposed to be there and how there should be signs of him being there, and like I said, looking a little frayed, and maybe he purposefully kind of keeps that from her. What do you think about that?
I think like maybe have her make the decision to give it to her mom would be good. But like honestly, like I don't think the game kind of makes a big a deal as they probably should. Like her father was a treasure hunter and is kind of like finding a lot of the things like ancient star maps, and like what her life could have looked like even if she wasn't a Jedi. Like she was probably going to be finding these star maps. And like I think I've mentioned like a really cool like TV spot could be like, why did you give me up to the Jedi? And it's like, because we didn't want you to risk your life like trying to find like these ancient star maps. And like you could show her risking her life like fighting against like creatures or Sith, and it's like finding literally star maps that like are like buried treasure, you know? I don't know. That's what I think. But what were you thinking, Dennis?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I do think that it's a very important quest in general, just for Bastila's character, because aside from that, Bastila is just like the romantic interest in this. Like, a lot of what her side quest is getting closer and closer to like Revan, and once this comes in, it actually gives like another dimension to her character that she can't be super closed off about. You know, because every time that you try to talk to her about anything in the game, it's just, oh, you know, she's just shut off. Oh, I'm the perfect Jedi. I can't do that. And suddenly something comes along from her past, and she almost completely loses that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So we found the star map then. So that kind of wraps up what the mission is to get accomplished here on Tatooine, at least.
Did Calo Nord already happen?
Cassia left Calo Nord back on Terrace to never be seen from again, I think.
Yeah, but Brian, I think, had him on Kashyyyk. I just think he's just like I don't know. Sometimes just when I can tell, like, they're like, oh, they just wanted to make a Boba Fett stand-in. I was just like, no.
Yeah.
No.
But yeah, so there's a ton of stuff on Tatooine, right? So you could, depending, well, if you're playing the game, depending on the order you do, you could have the run-in with Calo Nord. Like I'd mentioned, there's the side quest with Canderous that is there. You know, there's swoop bike racing. There's all sorts of other kind of side missions in Tatooine. So we're going to have to kind of decide what we want to keep and what we want to have go, because it's going to be a big section. So as far as film would go, Dennis, are there other things that you would like to see, or, you know, how much time do you think we need to spend in Tatooine in terms of a film? Now, the way Cassie and I are laying out the film is we're doing Tatooine, Manon, and then the Leviathan. So what do you think? Are there other aspects of Tatooine that we didn't kind of go over in our little run through right here that you think are really important for the story? Or what do you think? How much time should we dedicate to spending on this planet?
I don't think we need to be here for that long. I think that mostly just, you know, the Bastila thing needs to happen, and you know, obviously the main star map quest, which includes the Tusken Raiders and HK-47. Besides that, nothing else really needs to happen here, because it doesn't serve like the greater story, and it doesn't serve, you know, like this middle part of the story, if this is a movie.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that you could still have some of that stuff happen off screen. So when I'm kind of plotting out how I would want the film to go, when I get to Tatooine, I think that the Canderous side quest actually is pretty important, but I think that by and large could play off screen. You know, you just get Canderous saying, oh, or, you know, it gets tipped off that Jaggy's there, or someone sees him and tells him that Jaggy's there. So Canderous kind of leaves the party, right? And then we're reunited with him, you know, as we're heading off planet. So I think that some of that stuff can happen, but it can happen off screen, and we just get, you know, sort of mentions of it, or we can kind of, you know, cut over to sort of the, you know, culmination of that confrontation or whatever. But I would be worried to spend too much time here, because you have Tatooine, that's a big part of the film. You have the Leviathan, which has the potential to be a really big part of the film. I would hate to think that Manon just feels like this super short kind of stop off without having a little bit of time to explore there. So yeah, I think maybe somewhere just a little over a third, maybe like 40% ish of the movie. What about you, Cassia? What do you think pacing wise? How should we spend our time here on Tatooine, and how much time should that take up in the kind of overall film?
I would say 30% at most. This is meant to be like the fun part, like building the team, kind of establishing the rapport, you know, that the Ebon Hawk crew would have kind of introducing characters and like kind of like delving deeper into the characters and relationships established, in the first film. But yeah, I would say like in our film, like Mission and Zalbar are on Kashyyyk, like Zalbar's like kind of taking over for his people kind of there, and Mission is there. Like it makes more sense like for them to kind of like that's the family they found. They'll be back, for the battle, with the Starforge, kind of mostly because they invite themselves because they wanted to protect them. But I would say like a big chunk, I think Manon is interesting because it's something we haven't really seen before. It's kind of like a Cold War rather than an all-out war like the Clone Wars or the Rebels versus the Imperials. Like the Selkath are kind of like, we're going to play this for our advantage. Like you have to be at peace. Like we're a neutral planet.
Yeah.
If you want the Kolto, you have to abide by our rules. So it's like you really get to play with the secretive spy kind of stuff, which I'm more interested in than like zombie fish, scary big fish. I like playing with the kind of Cold War spy themes, and like it's kind of mirroring like the balance of the Force. It's like half Republic, half Sith. Like the Force is in balance; it could go either way, And it's like in a lot of ways, like Revan could go light, he could go dark. Bastila could go light, could go dark. The galaxy could go light, could go dark. Which I'm more interested in, like kind of delving underneath, and like you have to deal with a trial on Manon, and it's like, how could this person lie to someone? And like if Bastila just kind of has to be like, yeah, I mean, who could like keep it a secret like that from someone, and lie, like that would be crazy, like and then Jolie kind of like Jolie like knows that Revan is Revan, and like probably could have like an interesting conversation where like the audience probably doesn't understand what's being talked about, but like Bastila and Jolie know what's going on, and it's like, yeah, like lots of layers. It would be fun. And then like the Leviathan, like kind of like they're captured and then they need to be broken out, and like who I see them breaking out, like the Ebon Hawk crew, is Canderous, kind of like with renewed determination to help his friends, and then Juhani, like after Dantooine was hit, like being like, I need to save these people who helped me last time, like, and then like she would replace Bastila as the Jedi in the next film.
Yep.
So
the moral of the story here is we don't want to dwell too much on Tatooine because there's a lot more good stuff to cover in this film. So yeah, it's tricky to decide what you want to cut and what you definitely want to have happen here in this section of the film. Yeah. So I think does anyone else have anything to add about Anchorhead and our time here on Tatooine?
No. It plenty of fun to be had on Tatooine. So
that's right. That's why we keep turning back up and Tatooine, where the twin suns burn bright. So, well, Dennis, thank you very much for joining us and talking about what you have going on and talking with us about all this crazy Tatooine stuff. Why don't you tell why don't you tell everyone listening out there where they can find you and follow along with your projects and, what you've got on, and if you have any, tidbits about things that are in the works, anything you want to send out there, go for it.
Yeah. You can find me. Most of my social media is at DS Mowers Music, and that's also my website, dsmowersmusic.com. Facebook at Dennis Mowers Music. And yeah, the project KOTOR Live is going finally in motion. If you want to support what I'm doing and keep me going on that project and other projects, I also have a Patreon. It's DS Mowers Music. So, yeah.
Everyone make sure you go and give Dennis a follow on social media and check out his website for the projects and look him up on Patreon.
And if you are a game developer, reach out to me and we can talk about what we can do for your game. So
yeah, that's awesome. So definitely good luck with that. And yeah, make sure, like I said, make sure you're following Dennis on all the social media stuff and check out his website and, get in touch with him, see what he's got going on, and make sure you're following along with us so you can get in on the awesome lo-fi music he's been creating for the podcast. So
Thanks for coming on.
all right, thank you.
And you can find us on Instagram at Ebonhawk Podcast.
And if you want to connect with me, you can find me on Instagram. It's at astro_droid_. The Ebon Hawk can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as everywhere else that Anchor podcasts are distributed. Subscriptions, reviews, and shares help us out.
Our intro and outro themes were composed by Alistair Schurman at alistairsounds.wixsite.com/Alistair Sounds. Our transition music was composed by Christian Walker at christianwalkermusic.com. This episode of the Ebon Hawk Podcast has been brought to you by Nikki Dog from Patreon. May the Force be with you. We will be back soon. Bye for now.